don't know, Mark admitted. The nurse didn't say. They crested what Mark hoped was a minor summit, though the fog made it impossible to tell. The road began a steeper climb, winding through switchbacks that made Mark's hands ache from gripping the wheel. He realized he hadn't seen another vehicle in miles. No tail lights ahead, no headlights in the rearview mirror, just the two of them climbing through the spray limbo. Tell me about him. The old man said, your son. Mark felt his throat tighten. Talking about Danny made him real, made the situation real, made the possibility of loss unbearable. But something in the old man's voice, gentle, genuinely interested, made the words come anyway. He's smart, really smart. Got into UC Berkeley on a partial academic scholarship. Wants to study engineering. Mark's voice grew steadier as he talked, as if speaking about Danny's future could somehow guarantee it existed. He got this way of seeing how things work. You know, takes apart radios and computers just to understand them. Even as a little kid, he'd spend hours with Legos building these elaborate contraptions. Sounds like his father, the old man observed. Maybe I work in systems analysis, corporate stuff. Not nearly as interesting as what Danny does. Mark realized he was talking about his son in the present tense, as if the accident were just a minor interruption in an ongoing story. He gets bored easily. That's probably why he wanted the motorcycle. Cars are too predictable for him. The old man was quiet for a moment, seemingly lost in thought. Then he pointed out the window at a stand of pine trees barely visible in the fog. There, he said quietly. That was a bad one. Family from Sacramento, Christmas Eve, 1987. Ice on the road. Mark followed his gaze but saw nothing except the wall of fog and darkness. What are you talking about? Car went right through the guardrail. Father was driving, trying to get home for Christmas morning. Had presents in the trunk for two little girls. The old man's voice was matter of fact, as if he were reading from a police report. Mother was pregnant with their third child. A cold knot formed in Mark's stomach. How do you know about that? The old man didn't answer directly. Instead, he pointed in the opposite direction. And over there, young couple, honeymooners. June 1993. They were in a hurry, too, trying to catch a flight out of Reno. New husband was driving. Hadn't slept in 36 hours. Mark's foot found the brake pedal instinctively. The car slowed, tires gripping the wet asphalt. Listen, I don't know what kind of game you're playing. No game, the old man said calmly. Just observations. I've been traveling this road for many years. You see a lot of accidents when you spend enough time in one place. You live up here. You could say that. The old man's lips curved in what might have been a smile. I worked these roads, helped travelers reach their destinations. The phrasing struck Mark as odd, but before he could pursue it, the old man continued his litany. Spring of 1995. Right around that curve ahead. Teenage girl driving alone. Coming back from a party she wasn't supposed to be at. Never made it home. His voice carried no emotion. Just the steady recitation of facts. Her parents spent the whole night calling her friends, checking hospital. Didn't find out until morning. Stop. Mark said. Just stop talking about accidents. September 2001, day after the towers fell. Man driving from San Francisco to Denver trying to get home to his family. Couldn't fly, of course. Hadn't slept in 3 days, watching the news, trying to understand what was happening to the world. Mark pressed harder on the brake. The car slowed to 40, then 30. I said, stop. He had photos on the passenger seat. Wife and two boys kept looking at them instead of the road. The old man's voice remained maddeningly calm. Found the pictures scattered all over the mountainside. Some of them were never recovered. The car came to a complete stop on the shoulder. Mark sat there in the idling vehicle, his hands shaking on the wheel. What the hell is wrong with you? My son is dying and you're telling me ghost stories about car crashes. The old man turned to look at him directly for the first time since getting in the car. His eyes were ancient, filled with a sadness so deep it seemed to pull at Mark's soul. "I'm not telling you ghost stories," he said quietly. "I'm telling you the truth. This is a dangerous road, Mr. Fielding. Has been for decades. People in a hurry, racing to reach loved ones, making desperate drives through dangerous conditions." "How do you know my name?" Mark hadn't introduced himself. "I know a lot of things about the people I meet on this road." The old man's voice was gentle now, almost paternal. "I know you're 53 years old. I know you live alone in a Phoenix apartment that's too big for one person. I know you haven't spoken to your ex-wife in 6 months. Haven't seen your son since Christmas." Mark felt the blood drain from his face. "Who are you?" "Someone who helps travelers," the old man said simply. "Someone who's been doing this job for longer than you might believe." Mark's hand moved toward the door handle. Every instinct screamed at him to get out of the car, to leave this stranger on the side of the road and continue his desperate race to the hospital. But something held him back. Curiosity maybe, or growing certainty that normal rules didn't apply to whatever was happening here. "What kind of help?" he asked. "The kind people need when their journeys don't end the way they plan." The old man's voice was infinitely patient, as if he'd had this conversation many times before, the kind that helps them understand where they're really going. Mark looked ahead through the windshield. The fog seemed to be thickening again, pressing against the glass like searching fingers. He couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had changed in the last few minutes, that the world had shifted around them while they sat talking. "I need to get to the hospital," he said. But his voice lacked conviction. "Yes," the old man agreed. "You do." Mark put the car in drive and pulled back onto the highway. But as they began moving again, he noticed something that made his heart race. The odometer, which had shown 127,000 miles when he'd stopped, now read 127,000 miles exactly, as if no distance had been covered at all, as if they'd been sitting in the same spot the entire time. The road continued its winding climb through the mountains, but Mark began to notice other oddities. The fuel gauge hadn't moved despite hours of driving. The clock on the dashboard showed the same time it had when he picked up the old man. Even more unsettling, his phone showed no bars of signal and no record of the frantic calls he remembered making from Phoenix. "Tell me about the accident," the old man said. "Your son's accident." Mark's throat constricted. Motorcycle versus SUV at an intersection. The SUV ran a red light. Danny was thrown. He couldn't finish the sentence. "Do you know what his injuries are?" "Specifically, head trauma, internal bleeding, broken bones." Mark recited the clinical terms like a mantra. "They said he was unconscious when the paramedics arrived. But alive." "Yes, alive." The old man nodded slowly. Hope is a powerful thing. It can keep people going long past the point where they should stop. Sometimes it's a blessing. Sometimes it's a curse. What's that supposed to mean? Only that love makes us do desperate things. Makes us take risks we wouldn't normally take. Makes us drive too fast through dangerous conditions because someone we care about needs us. Mark felt a chill that had nothing to do with the mountain air. "I'm being careful." "Are you?" Mark looked down at the speedometer. The needle was climbing toward 80 again, though he had no memory of accelerating. His knuckles were white on the wheel, his whole body tense with the effort of maintaining control on the fog-slicked road. "These curves can be treacherous," the old man observed mildly. "Many people have learned that the hard way." As if summoned by his words, Mark saw lights off to the right down in the trees. Red and blue flashing lights like emergency vehicles. For a moment, he could have sworn he saw the outline of a wrecked car, twisted metal gleaming in the portable floodlights. "Did you see that?" he asked. "See what?" Mark looked again, but there was nothing but darkness and fog beyond the guardrail. "I thought I saw lights." "Emergency vehicles. Probably just reflections from your headlights," the old man said. "The fog can play tricks on your eyes." But Mark had the distinct impression that the old man had seen exactly what he'd seen and knew exactly what it meant. They drove in silence for several minutes. The only sounds, the engines laboring, and the whisper of tires on asphalt. The road seemed to stretch on forever, each curve revealing only more fog, more climbing the highway. Mark found himself checking the odometer compulsively. But the numbers never seemed to change in any meaningful way. It was like being trapped in a loop, forever climbing toward a summit that never arrived. How far to the past? He asked. Not far now, the old man replied. We're almost there. But Mark had been driving this road for what felt like hours, and they seemed no closer to the top than when they'd started. The fog, if anything, was getting thicker. The world beyond the headlights had shrunk to nothing. I need to call the hospital, Mark said.